Thank you for texting that to me. I did get it.
All right, we're gonna call a meeting to order. And, we have a forum. Okay. And, first start out with, public comment. And, everybody's limited to 1 minute, please. 2 minutes. Is anybody for public comment? Anybody in the Zoom group for public comment?
Yes, on Zoom, Cynthia have public comment.
Go ahead, Cynthia. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay, I would just like to announce the 14th annual North Richmond Music Festival. It's gonna be on July the 12th at Children Reed Park from 12 until 5 p.m. And if you haven't signed up to set a table up, please get in contact with me. I'll put my phone number in the chat. Thank you.
Anybody else in public comment? Okay. There's nobody in Zoom. All right, so, we will take a motion for approval of the, agenda. Ready?
Okay, Chairman, I would like to, make a motion to approve the agenda for, Tuesday, June the 3rd, 2025, at 5 p.m.
All right, we say that. All right, it's been motion. Is there a second? It's moved properly second. All in favor, of anyone saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, passes. Did we not have a quorum last time? We have minutes, right? Yeah, let's see. if we can get that. Okay, so, let me see. Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I have,
Okay.
We can't hear you.
All right, so we're talking about the minutes, and one of the things that I wanted to correct was Bustamante. So we were talking about the 19 million that was supposed to come to North Richmond that is being held up by the current presidential administration. So my comment was to contact Congressman Garamendi or Marcus Sonia. So we want to take out Sonia Bustamante. I'm not sure.
Okay, so noted. With the changes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I'll, second the motion.
Your motion, to approve it, and your second.
Yes, you make the corrections and you, with the corrections, you make the motion.
Yes.
Okay, and I second it, okay.
All right. All in favor, I move by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions, disagreement, okay, passes. And I want to announce the new member, Latifa. Welcome aboard.
And remember, well,
Always been committed to what we're doing here. I'm happy to have it. Yeah, we're going to move to law enforcement. Can I see the sheriff's here? Or like? Right there.
All right, my name is Brian Fitzgerald, Lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office. I'm newly appointed as a base station, station house commander. So for the month of May, North Richmond had 373 calls for service, and 26 reports were generated. Some of the highlights would be there were some grand thefts, some misdemeanor vandalism. There was a domestic violence call where subject was arrested, as well as one rape. The info on that was very vague. It was an unknown location of where it occurred. Obviously, due to the nature of the call, I can't give you guys any information on that. But yeah, 26 reports in total for North Richmond. And new to the area, I've worked here as a deputy before, but as a lieutenant, being the station house commander, I'm new, but excited to be back and looking forward to working with everybody out here.
All right. Good to introduce-
Questions? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And welcome, and could you introduce the other deputy here? You know, back there, we want to see our people.
I'm Sergeant Greenberg.
Yeah, okay, okay.
She works swing shift, so afternoon into the evening shift on weekdays. So,
Well, welcome you both,
thank you.
okay?
You said
Thank-
Officer Grayberg,
Sergeant Bradenberg.
Sergeant Grayberg,
Bradenberg.
Great, and, yeah.
and when did you start? Sorry.
I started out at base station in January.
All right, no questions? Go ahead, Jane.
Yes, could you tell Jamie Holmes, the CHPC, we're right next door to the, sheriff's office right there on Red Jackson Way. Can you bring us, any updates on that if you have any?
So what was the,
The occupying that, and so how often, before there were a couple of sheriff people there, a couple of deputies there, and they said that you guys are gonna start utilizing that space.
okay,
Do you know anything about it?
I don't, because this is only my second week, so I'm getting caught up to speed on everything going on in the whole area.
Okay,
So,
so just one on Red Jackson Way, 1535, Red Jackson, Red Jackson Way.
okay,
If you can give us an update on that
Sure.
next time you come.
Mhm.
But I'll be following.
all right,
Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and thank you.
Have a good night.
I don't see any other law enforcement here. So what? Tanya has been working with both Richmond PD and also the Highway Patrol. We have not got, but we are still looking. Go ahead.
So Tanya, have you been in touch with the CHP and, Richmond PD recently?
Recently, I just sent them reminders.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'll work with you on that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move the agenda to tree protection and preservation ordinance.
Hello. Can I use this table?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is Jamar Stamps. I'm with the Department of Conservation and Development, Contra Costa County. And tonight I'm going to present an update on the county's tree ordinance update. First, I'm going to go through a little bit of background about why we started this process in the first place and how we got here. Go through some of the high level details about what's changing in the proposed ordinance. And in the end, talk a little bit about next steps and where we are trying to end up with the rest of this process. In your agenda packet, you should have a copy of the draft ordinance itself. It looks like an actual codified ordinance, but just not codified, it's in draft form. And then also a 3-set table in the ordinance that summarizes some of the proposed changes in the ordinance that I'm going to go over. And on the second table talks about how the proposed ordinance would apply to certain types of trees. And then on the third table, there's a comparison of how the current ordinance would respond in certain situations versus the proposed ordinance. And I'll go through a couple of examples on the third table, but most of my focus for tonight's update is going to be on the first table and into the second table. So to start, actually, before I get into that, I assume everybody's gone through the materials and everything. Is there anything I can clarify or any questions I can answer before I start the summary?
I have questions once you go through it about
Okay.
the arguments and the.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so background. The original tree ordinance that the county's operating under right now was first adopted in the 1990s. This is about when our previous general plan, we recently adopted a new general plan in November 2024. And before that, the original general plan was drafted and adopted in the 1990s along with this ordinance. So, I mean, you can imagine with all of the time that's passed since the 1990s, all of the legislative changes, all of the changes in the land use and transportation planning landscape, just in the kind of the general environment of planning and land development, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have an ordinance that's stagnant. And it even shows in the way that we apply our ordinance sometimes. The ordinance has a lot of old and outdated language, some provisions that are also antiquated and outdated and don't really apply to today's development environment. And so the main goal of us updating our tree ordinance is to make sure that we have an ordinance that is one, contemporary and consistent with some of our neighboring agencies, cities and other counties, but also have an ordinance that's easy to read for not only the public, but our own staff. Just kind of a side anecdote, even our own staff people, some of the most senior people, including myself in the department, have trouble interpreting the ordinance sometimes for simple things like trying to determine what a protected tree is. And that obviously is a problem. So again, one of the primary goals of updating the tree ordinance is to make sure that we have a workable and easy to use tree ordinance, but also making sure that it's still effective and can be applied to the situations that are necessary for a tree ordinance to apply to. And so with that, going into a little bit about what the new ordinance is supposed to be doing if it's adopted. So starting with table 1, in the top row, you'll see the titles on the left column. One is parameter, and this the parameter column basically lists some questions, basic questions about what you do in certain situations or what is supposed to be done if you're referring to this ordinance. And then the column to the right of that, the summary of proposed provision, talks about or lists some of the examples of what would be done process-wise if these situations applied. So for example, I talked about it being difficult to determine what a protected tree is in the current ordinance. And it really is. Unfortunately, in the current ordinance, not only is determining a protected tree based on things as simple as its size and species, but also there are certain site characteristics that apply. So for example, if you have a tree on a vacant property or an undeveloped lot is what it's called in our current ordinance, that any tree as small as like an apple tree that might be 4 or 5 inches in diameter could be considered protected, which intuitively doesn't make sense that we would want to protect a small, maybe dying apple tree on a vacant property to make way for a development or housing project or something like that. But a big standard oak tree, 44 inches or more in diameter on a property that does have a house on it, that's not a part of a standard 4 or more. And standard 4 or more is another one of those phrases in our current ordinance that determines if a tree is protected. That single standing oak tree on that developed site is not protected. It can be cut down without a permit, which again, doesn't make a lot of sense. I know it sounds like I'm probably making that up. I guarantee you, if you read our current ordinance, that's how it reads. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we take away all of the ambiguous language, all of the confusing details about determining what a protected tree is away, and just say, if the tree is of a certain size, regardless of species, that tree is could be considered protected and possibly needs a permit to be removed. And I'll talk a little bit more about what determines a protected tree and what kind of process is necessary for its removal in a second. But to just go over the bullets specifically in this section. So what types of trees are proposed to be protected? All native and non-native trees. Again, we have a list of species of trees, native trees in our current ordinance that are considered protected. And we want to do away with that because again, it's too confusing and there are plenty more species of trees now that could be considered protected. Except there are two exceptions though. Monterey pine and eucalyptus tree are considered exceptions for protection or needing a permit for removal because of their fire hazard susceptibility. We have heard from other communities about other potential tree species that could be hazards. And so if that situation exists here too, if there are certain tree species that could be considered hazardous or dangerous or fire hazard susceptible, please let us know and we'll take that into consideration too. A designated heritage tree, in our current ordinance, a heritage tree is considered one that has been designated by the Board of Supervisors. So those are obviously deemed protected. And any tree that's shown to be preserved on any county entitlement, like a land use permit or development plan permit, or that's a part of a replacement tree plan. So if you remove a tree and your permit required you to replace it with a certain amount of trees, those trees are considered protected. So again, very simply, just those are the scenarios where a tree would be protected, not if it is on an undeveloped site or developed site in a standard 4 or more next to a creek, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff goes away. Let's just keep it pretty straightforward. Going down to the second line, what actions may require a permit? And in our current ordinance, this isn't as tricky or complicated. It's actually still it's still as straightforward as what we're proposing, but basically if you're proposing to remove a tree or do any work within the drip line of a tree, and work within the drip line can be any like deep trenching or grading that could damage the root system and potentially kill the tree, that would require a permit. The third line down, what type of permit might be required? So as I kind of alluded to a second ago, what we're proposing is that no permit be required for small trees. And I can go into more specifics about what's considered a small tree. A ministerial permit would not be required for mid-sized trees. Ministerial meaning if you have a tree that's of quote mid-size, and again, I'll go into those specifics in a second, you can simply come into our office over the counter, pay a flat fee, and that flat fee would get you a permit that would grant you permission to remove that tree. You wouldn't need to notify the neighbors. There's no public hearing or anything like that. That would just be a straight permit over the counter. And then for larger trees, like kind of I mentioned earlier, the large heritage trees or oak trees, discretionary permit. And so that would be similar to what we have now. That's the only permit process we have now for the tree ordinance. We don't have anything that allows no permit or anything that allows an over-the-counter ministerial permit. It's all a permit process that requires notification to the neighbors. And in the case of a tree permit, it's also appealable to the Planning Commission. So if the department director makes a decision on your permit in our current ordinance and the neighbor happens to appeal it, that goes straight to the Planning Commission and then the Board of Supervisors, not the zoning administrator, which should be a logical next step. And that's what we're also hoping to fix with the current ordinances, aligning the permit process with the tree ordinance with other processes like small lot design review or land use permit, going to the zoning administrator and having that be appealable to the Planning Commission instead of the tree permit going straight to the Planning Commission. And then something that comes up a lot too are questions about exceptions. And our current ordinance does have exceptions from needing a permit or for requiring a permit for tree removal. And in this case, a lot of those are carrying over. Some examples are if there's a hazardous situation, if the tree is shown to be dead or dying, and it's obvious, then you don't need a permit for its removal. If there's prior approval to remove the permit, obviously you don't need a permit for that. If it's precluded by law, if it's owned by a public agency, routine maintenance, that kind of thing. One thing that is different in our proposed ordinance versus our old ordinance is that, we're now as a society becoming much more aware of fire hazard susceptibility in certain areas of California. And like East Richmond Heights, Kensington, the Ridgeline along the Oakland Hills, and some other areas around the county are in what's called the very high fire hazard severity zone. I think even some parts of El Sobrante might be in that area. In those situations, property owners who have properties that show up on those CAL FIRE maps, the very high fire hazard severity zone maps, would be exempt from this ordinance. You don't need a permit. Unfortunately, right now under the current ordinance, that exception it's not stated in the ordinance, but because you know, it is a state mandate. It's superseded, so it doesn't matter. But we just want to make sure we reiterate that exception in the ordinance so that people are aware and not having to worry about if they need to get a permit from the county to create that defensible space in their yard for fire safety. And then jumping down to the bottom, what are the permitting criteria? So like I mentioned, in our current ordinance, we basically have one set of criteria and one permit process, and it may sound like it would be more complicated if we expand that process to a ministerial permit or a discretionary permit, but it actually, you know, we believe would be simpler because again, the ministerial permit is pretty much objective. If the tree is a certain size, you can pay a flat fee, get the permit, go remove it. If it's a larger tree, there has to be a little bit more analysis involved, maybe like review of an arborist report or an actual site visit, then that's when a discretionary process becomes, that's when a discretionary process is applied. Then we have, you know, notice to the neighbors, possibly a public hearing, that kind of thing. And so that's what we're proposing under the new ordinance. And then at the bottom, it says other noteworthy aspects, tree replacement and safeguards for remaining trees for discretionary processes only. And what that basically means is if development is proposed as part of a land use entitlement application, like you're building a house or if you're building a shopping center, we want to make sure that those existing trees on the site are being protected with fencing, that kind of thing. And then moving on to table 2. And so I won't go through the entire table, but just to give you an idea of what it's being stated here. Like I mentioned in the first table, trees of a certain size will need a certain permit process. And so how we've distinguished the tree types is not by species, but just by the tree type. So there's non-coniferous and there's coniferous trees. And basically what that means is a coniferous tree is one that grows pine cones or needles. And then if it doesn't, it's non-coniferous. And if a tree, a non-coniferous tree is under 28 inches in circumference, or a coniferous tree is under 48 inches in circumference, then it's exempt from needing a permit. The mid-sized tree or the ministerial permit tree is any tree from 28 to 56 inches that's non-coniferous, and then any coniferous tree that's 48 inches to 94 inches, that's the flat fee over the counter. Come in, we'll give you a permit, you go take care of business. And then lastly, the discretionary permit, the one that requires an application process, notice the neighbors, public hearing, et cetera, are for the much larger trees. So for non-coniferous trees, that's any tree with a circumference of 56 inches or more, or for a coniferous tree with a circumference of 94 inches or more. So we feel like that applying that kind of, applying those kinds of parameters with those types of processes will hopefully make it a lot easier for us to administer our tree ordinance. And then the rest of the table goes into different types of coniferous and non-coniferous trees like multi-stem, but it's kind of the same philosophy there with the sizes. There's the smaller exemptions, mid-sized ministerial, and larger trees needing the discretion. And then I'll close up with the last table, comparison of the current and proposed tree ordinance. And again, like I mentioned before, just kind of starting at the top, we're changing our process a little bit, so that's requiring us to change what the minimum size for a protected tree is. And it's gotten a little bigger, which means you would think that more trees could be removed without a permit, which technically is true, but our research over the past few years has showed that people aren't really concerning themselves with smaller trees as much anyway. They are coming in though for getting permits for trees that are around the sizes that we're proposing in the new ordinance. And so we feel like we're not going to miss a lot, but we'll also still capture the situations that need our attention for tree permitting. We talked about the tree species already. And then the rules, again, that would determine if a tree is protected and needs a permit aren't going to be site dependent as much as they are in the current ordinance. And again, that basically means, is the tree in a stand of 4 or more? Is it next to a creek? I mean, we already have creek preservation policies in our general plan and also in our zoning ordinance. And so we don't feel like that needs to be replicated in the tree ordinance. And so we're taking all that out to make it a little bit easier. And then changing our processes so that that we have different decision levels for different types of tree permits. And then closing out on this table, like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, you know, we have certain scenarios where if you have a tree that is of a significant size, but is on a certain type of property or a property that has certain site characteristics, fortunately, that tree wouldn't be considered protected by the letter of our current ordinance. And so cleaning that up to make sure that those types of significant trees are covered and that the trees that are relatively insignificant, you know, can be exempt from needing a permit, and people won't have to go through the headache of getting a permit to remove those trees to build an addition or a shed or something like that, et cetera. So that was a quick overview, very quick overview of the details of our tree ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions. And before we get to that, I'll just say we've opened this process up to the public, but we've been visiting the municipal advisory councils across the county to give this presentation, and also mention that this is an introduction to our draft ordinance update. Again, it's taken almost 25 years for us to get to updating this ordinance. So we would like to get it done as soon as possible, but clearly, you know, we have the time to incorporate more comments and take more feedback. We have a comment deadline set up for June 30th, but what we wanted to try to give the MACs an opportunity to do is to receive this introduction. And if you wanted to, at your next meeting, you can convene to discuss it without us present, and, you know, develop comments if you want to in your open meeting and provide us comments that way. And for your MAC, it works out pretty well because even though the deadline is on June 30th, I believe your next MAC meeting is the next day. Is it the first Tuesday of the month or the first Tuesday? So even if you were to meet that day, develop your comments and send them to us by the end of the week, obviously that's acceptable. So, but we'll leave that up to you, however you decide you want to work that. And yeah, that's our update. So happy to answer any questions or take any feedback now. Or again, if you want to give yourself some time to digest this information.
Zoom, and we'll come back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You want any questions? The audience here. Does see any on the Zoom? Oh, Jane, you can answer.
I don't see any Zoom.
Oh, Cynthia have a question on Zoom.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay, so speaking of this tree ordinance, North Richmond has a large piece of property called Los Deltas, and it's going to be coming up for development real soon, and it has a lot of old trees. And when the person get ready to develop the property, how do we know they're going to comply with this tree ordinance, and how do they go about doing this? Because the property is just loaded with old, large trees.
So when they submit their official land entitlement application, whatever form that might take, if it's a development plan or subdivision map application, a tree permit process will coincide with that. And so whoever that project is assigned to, whatever planner it's assigned to, will be responsible for making sure that all of the trees on site that are deemed protected by the ordinance are covered and are either protected during the construction process, or they're replaced, and there's restitution provided for them if they have to be removed.
Oh, so that's a part of the application that they'll be submitting?
Right, correct. So yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, and then but may I have your full name? Jamar Stamps, is that it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Your name, your full name.
Jamar Stamps, yes.
Okay, you with the conservation with the Contra Costa County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. You was gonna say something?
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. So this ordinance that you're doing now, is this ordinance for old trees and new projects that are coming in, or is it for the trees that you already have planted? And there seems to be a problem, and I'll explain it. Right around this building here, we had problems with the trees. Some of the trees were dead, some of the trees have fallen, creating problems. And called the county out to come look at the trees. Some of the trees they removed, some of the trees they said, oh, the tree is okay. Well, maybe it is, but it just looks dead and they create problems. So before you leave your today, if you just look at the perimeter of this building, look at the trees. And then down on Fred Jackson Way, right around the special district, There are trees down there that's on the sidewalk, and those trees are creating problems by lifting the sidewalk. Every so often, I have to call the county to come out to look at the sidewalk, because it's lifting the sidewalk, so, which tells me, and I'm not a tree person, that you planted the wrong kind of trees there. And it's creating a problem, so, will that ordinance be addressing something like that, or the ordinance just for stuff?
It's just for private property. So it sounds like, I know for Fred Jackson Way's sake, it's public right of way, so it wouldn't cover Fred Jackson Way, unfortunately. And I don't know about this building or the perimeter of the building, if it's public property or if it's in the public right of way. If it is, then it would be covered by the county, and public agencies are exempt from the county's tree ordinance. And so whatever process they have to take to address tree issues, they can go ahead and do it without having to get a permit from the county. And this ordinance, the proposed ordinance we went over tonight, wouldn't take effect until 30 days after it's adopted, which probably won't be until early next year.
I know who to contact the county
Sure.
regarding this and that way, so I'm okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your presentation, and I have a few questions. I'm not gonna ask you all the questions. As you talk, you did answer some of the questions, but I do have a few that I just wanted to have clarified, for the community to hear also. Your, connection with private property, as you mentioned. Now, looking up and down the creek, Wildcat Creek, you do have trees that have overgrown, and it is connecting borderline with private properties. Have you looked at those trees also?
So drafting this ordinance, we didn't look at any specific situations, including that one, unfortunately. But those kinds of problems, similar to the Fred Jackson Way issue, we would want to talk to either the flood control district or maintenance and public works, because they could go out and take care of it. You said,
It is public works, up and
Okay.
down. Fred.
but they're going over onto private
It's
property,
over
not
into
on private property.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's over into, it's connected over into
Yeah.
overgrown, and you have tall trees
Yeah,
that hasn't been maintained, the maybe over years, they just have grown wild,
yeah, so,
And
yeah.
it is something working, with the trail, but it has more or less been forgotten about, and now it's overgrown. And now you're looking at fire hazards, and your property has to be so many feet away, from overgrown dry grasses and shrubs or whatever that may be truly flammable. So the responsibility may not be on your property, but it's on the property that is owned by the county, and it has been looked at. So at this time, you're saying the county hasn't really looked at has looked at those trailways? Up and down?
I only meant that in terms of
Oh, okay.
our drafting this ordinance, that issue is not, I don't want, it's gonna sound like a bureaucrat now, that's a different department, so we don't. But it's actually Public Works, because it's the flood control district, and it's, yeah, exactly. So I would have to talk to somebody. I can't speak for them, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. So I don't want to say, yeah, we'll take care of it right away, or yeah, that's something we can do. I don't know. Yeah, our ordinance wouldn't be able to cover it because our ordinance exempts public agencies, including our own. But that's actually a good thing in this case, because if they have the resources and the capability to come out and do it as soon as possible, they can do that without having to go through this process.
Right,
Yeah.
without intermittent and stuff.
But I can definitely, I know who the tree maintenance people in Public Works that can mention it to them, and also the flood control.
But it's different trees that have grown over the, 40.
Or if they wanna come out and make a little presentation about it.
Yeah, and let us know, yeah,
Sure.
where this actually fall into place.
Cause you can't answer for that.
Right, yeah,
Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
okay, that's okay, because you don't have to. Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is anybody else?
Okay, so how long does it normally take to review ordinance? You said it's been 25 years. So do you have like a set time that you review ordinance, and how did this, why did it take 25 years?
It's a great question. I don't know. the beginning of the update to this process preceded me, and I started working at the county in 2006. So it was handed off, it was handed off to many planners for one reason or another, whether it just be, you know, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
So a couple things, so you said this is basically referring to private property, and then also, you're saying that, so you're not dealing with creeks or anything like that, so in this ordinance, would you be like referencing, so if it's not addressed in your document, would you say, if you're looking for this, this is where you need to go, because it seems like the creeks would be pretty important. And then also, I think sometimes we have like third parties come in and maybe with the intention of beautifying, the community. And maybe, I think that's what you mentioned, you know, the trees, and so, but if they didn't, I just think there needs to be, rather than everyone working in a silo, maybe, you know, if we can like look at one document and say, okay, if it's not, what you're looking for is not here, this is where you need to go. So I think, even though this is only for private, then maybe you direct folks to where they need to go get other information, whether it's for creeks, or for county, like public works or whatever. If we just direct folks where they need to go, so they don't have to, you know, I think that the department should be working together instead of everybody having this to go. If everything's in one document, people can just look at the one document and get all the information.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be helpful to cross-reference other relevant documents for scenarios that wouldn't apply here. Because we do that in our general plan, we do that in other parts of our zoning code. So yes, I think we can.
Thank you very much for it. We will have our meeting. If we have some more comments, we'll add some of the ones that were here already. If we have no, we'll make it there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, going to, Bay Area Quality Program. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members, and members of the community. I'm Via Tran, Deputy Executive Officer of Public Affairs for the Bay Area Air District. Joining me online is Dr. Meredith Bauer, our Deputy Executive Officer of Compliance and Engineering. Also, our Manager of Compliance Enforcement, Tracy Lee, as well as our External Affairs Officer, Lisa Fasano. We were invited this evening to present to the North Richmond Municipal Action Committee Council. Advisory Council, thank you, by Supervisor Joya to talk about our complaint program. And so I'll turn it over to Ms. Lee. I also have brought some pamphlets. We'll put it at the back of the table. It's enough for everybody. But Ms. Lee will go into the program in greater detail. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tran, and good evening, council. Quick sound check.
We hear you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. My name is Tracy Lee. I'm a manager at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in the Compliance Enforcement Division. Thank you for inviting me to join your meeting today and to provide you an overview of our complaint program. My presentation today will cover what our complaint response and investigation entails, how to report and air quality complaint, some of the factors that influence our response and investigation findings, and how communities can help us better identify and pinpoint compliance concerns when reporting a complaint. I will also be highlighting what our data shows across our 9 Bay Area County jurisdiction with a closer look at the 94801 North Richmond zip code. Next slide, please. The Air Quality Complaint Program is one of our Air District's key programs as it provides an avenue for the public to communicate air quality concerns to us. We recognize that community members are often the first to become aware of air quality issues in their community and notice a problem. And when the public reports a complaint to us, it really helps us better understand where potential air quality violations may be occurring that we wouldn't otherwise be aware of. But it also allows us to direct our staffing resources to pinpoint problems more quickly. Our goal is to provide timely responses to the air quality complaints reported to the Air District, investigate potential violations, and help resolve air quality concerns. We take complaints very seriously, and investigate all complaints as an impartial party to determine the facts and circumstances involved, and take enforcement action when violations are discovered. Next slide, please. This slide shows the number of air quality complaints that are reported to us broken down by year, with a total of 22,000 complaints in the last 5 years, from 2020 through 2024. Across the air district, complaint totals can fluctuate depending on what's happening at the sites and facilities we regulate. Air quality complaints are treated as high priority investigations. Although we aren't able to predict when an air quality complaint is reported, or our inspectors are strategically assigned to geographical areas in the field where they are prepared to respond quickly, and they operate in coordination with inspectors in the surrounding area and with our regulatory partners when needed. Next slide, please. This slide here shows the breakdown of air quality complaints in the Bay Area by type of complaints for a 5-year period. The odors, the complaints reported to us make up the largest portion of complaints received at the Air District, about 47%, followed by wood smoke complaints at about 33% and dust complaints at 7%. We also receive complaints about asbestos, gasoline dispensing facilities, illegal fires, and excessive idling. This pie chart represents the type of complaints the Air District can receive, but as you can see, we do have an other category, which is a catch-all category. Some of what's in the other category include complaints about painting, cars, auto body shops, exhaust fumes, and flaring, etc. Next slide, please. This slide breaks down the complaint totals by the 9 Bay Area counties to give you a better understanding of the complaint distribution. As you can see, most of the reported complaints are in Contra Costa, Alameda, and Santa Clara counties. I'll provide a closer look at the complaint totals specifically in the North Richmond zip code later in my presentation. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates our complaint process at a high level. When an air quality complaint is reported to the Air District, the complaint received initiates the inspector's response and investigation, which then triggers an on-site inspection and investigation at the potential emission source, and results in the inspector's documentation of investigation findings and enforcement actions if a violation of an air quality regulation is determined. I'll go into more detail regarding each of these steps. Next slide. This slide shows how to report an air quality complaint. There are 2 methods for reporting a complaint to the Air District: by phone via our 1-800-334-ODOR hotline, or through our online complaint reporting system. There is an option for complaints to be filed anonymously. Our complaint hotline and online reporting system are both available 24/7, including weekends and holidays. Outside of core business hours, we have staff who are on call, ready to respond to incidents. We have over-the-phone language interpretation service available in over 150 languages for non-English speakers. All personal information such as names, addresses, phone numbers are maintained as confidential information by the Air District to the fullest extent permitted by law. One thing to keep in mind here is that we aren't first responders. While we do try to respond to complaints as soon as we can, we don't have the ability to respond to each and every complaint we receive outside of business hours. For those complaints that aren't associated with an incident, the on-call supervisor reviews the complaint information and determines what level of response is needed. And if an investigation does not happen immediately, the inspector will follow up to conduct the investigation the next business day. Next slide, please. This slide here shows our complaint response time goals during Air District business hours. The response time listed on the table here represents the initial contact by phone, followed by an in-person investigation. Complaints with ongoing emissions and those received from schools, preschools, daycares, and senior centers have the highest priority, and we aim to respond within 30 minutes. And for those that do not have ongoing emissions, the response time is typically between 30 minutes and 2 hours. For complaints alleging gasoline dispensing facilities, the response time is typically within 24 hours. As mentioned earlier, our inspectors do strive to respond quickly to complaints as it helps them with their investigation and identifying potential emission sources and violations. Next slide, please. This slide here highlights the complaint response and investigation process. After a complaint is received, the inspector reviews the complaint information to determine the type of complaint it is, the description of the emissions provided by the complainant, and the date and time of occurrence. The inspector also maps out the complainant's location and alleged source to better understand the magnitude of impact to the surrounding community. The inspector will attempt to contact the complainant by phone to ask follow-up questions and determine whether the complainant is available to meet in person. Although not required, meeting the complainant is helpful to the inspector so they can observe the ongoing emissions together with the complainant. The inspector's investigation entails an area patrol at the location where the emission was observed or at the alleged location. This can be at the complainant's location of residence, workplace, or wherever the complainant noted the emissions were observed at. Patrolling upwind and downwind of the alleged site and facility helps the inspector identify the source of emissions. Next slide, please. A key part of our complaint investigation is the on-site inspection at the alleged site or another potential source of emissions identified by the inspector. Upon arriving at the site, the inspector looks out for any visible emissions or odors that can be observed outside the facility. The inspector notes meteorological conditions like wind speed and direction because this can typically give the inspector some insights on where the alleged emissions are coming from and how it may be traveling within the area. The inspector meets with the facility owner and operator to conduct an inspection of the operations, the equipment, the sources to ensure they are complying with applicable regulations and permit requirements. If a facility doesn't have an air district permit, the inspector will look out for any sources that may require one. The inspector reviews the hours of operations and production schedules, which help correlate any information provided by the complainant. In addition, the inspector investigates whether there are any process upsets or equipment breakdowns and malfunctions. This is an important part of the investigation because oftentimes these could lead to air quality emissions, whether visible emissions or odors. The inspector also reviews record keeping and reporting requirements are met. Next slide, please. It is essential that the inspector documents their observations and findings and include any supporting evidence, such as pictures and videos if taken. If a source is discovered to be out of compliance, the inspector takes enforcement actions to issue a notice of violation for an applicable air district, state, or federal regulation that was violated. This includes issuing a violation for a facility's permit requirement or a public nuisance if one was documented. The inspector could also issue a notice to comply. However, this is much less common. These are typically for more minor violations, such as one-time administrative violations. We do work closely with our legal division on enforcement cases and compliance strategies. And for those issues that potentially involve other local regulatory partners, we may work on joint investigations and enforcement cases together. With every complaint investigation, there is a report that the inspector prepares. In each report, the inspector will detail the investigation findings and specify whether the emissions was present at time of investigation and whether it could be traced to a source. If the emissions can be verified based on other evidence, the inspector would note that as well. For example, in the case of a fire, we can use the fire department's run report to verify that the emissions did occur. The complainant can request a copy of the complaint report online or by phone or by making a public records request on our website. We may determine that the complaint is also not within the air district's jurisdiction or authority following our inspector's investigation. And for those situations, we refer those complaints to the appropriate regulatory agency. I do want to mention here that there is a detail about the Air District's public nuisance authority when it comes to compost odors, and I'll be covering that later in my presentation. Next slide, please. Now that you have a better understanding of the Air District's complaint program, the slide here provides a complaint summary for the North Richmond 94801 area. From 2020 through 2024, there were a total of 1,295 complaints reported to the Air District alleging sites and facilities in the area, with majority of the complaints alleging Chevron and West Contra Costa landfill, followed by green waste recycle yard and chemtrade, which were only alleged a handful of complaints, as you can see. Complaints at these four facilities accounted for approximately 69% of complaints in the 94801 zip code. Approximately 30% of the complaints received didn't allege a site or facility or provides facility information by the complainant, as reflected in the 364 complaints noted in the italics here. In those cases, the inspector needs to determine whether the complaint could be associated and traced to a specific site or facility. As shown by the different colors of the bar graph, 70% of complaints in the 94801 zip code alleged odors, 9% alleged illegal fires, 3% dust and particulate, and less than 1% was attributed to excessive idling. There is a category for other shown in the green on the bar graph here. Those complaints total to 17% and almost all were related to Chevron flaring. Next slide, please. This slide here highlights the complaints that were alleging the Chevron Richmond refinery. In the 5-year period, Chevron made up approximately 58% of all complaints in the North Richmond area. The dark blue on the bar graph here shows the number of Chevron odor complaints reported. Approximately 54% of all Chevron complaints were odor related. In the green shows the other types of complaints alleging Chevron. 30% of all the Chevron complaints were related to flaring. An average of 30% over the last 5 years of all complaints alleging Chevron were verified and traced to the refinery. From 2020 through 2024, a total of 880 violations were issued to the refinery. Violations were issued for a variety of inspection activities that happen at the refinery on a daily basis and not necessarily complaint related. Beyond our complaint investigations by the inspector, we have dedicated refinery inspectors going into the refinery to make sure they are complying with air quality rules and permit requirements. For example, the inspector goes on site to conduct comprehensive inspections of specific sources and operations, the abatement, monitoring, and control devices that are permitted. The inspector could check for equipment leaks along piping and connectors associated with process units. Inspectors can climb tanks to inspect seals and, to make sure they are vapor tight, and check refineries' record keeping and operator logs, look at maintenance and monitoring records, and much more. These inspection activities at the refinery, along with the community complaints, help us pinpoint compliance problems and issues and allows us to take enforcement action to ensure the refinery is accountable. Next slide, please. The slide summarizes the complaints alleging West Contra Costa landfill. All of the complaints were associated with odors. About 10% of all complaints in the 94801 zip code allege West Contra Costa landfill from 2020 through 2024. However, as I mentioned earlier, there may be complaints that don't allege the landfill, but are still associated with odors from the site. Majority of the odors do allege garbage, a general garbage odor, and about 36% of all the complaints allege compost odor. An average of 7.5% of all complaints that allege the landfill were verified and traced to the landfill by the inspector. Inspectors do attempt to trace odors to a specific source at the landfill and then try to make sure that the source is operating in compliance with permit conditions and regulations that are applicable. One thing I want to note here is that odors originating from compost operations are exempt from public nuisance provision of the Air District regulation, and the California Health and Safety Code. When the Air District receives compost odor complaints, inspectors refer these complaints to the Contra Costa Local Enforcement Agency, as they have jurisdiction and enforcement authority to issue public nuisance for compost operations. Air District inspectors do try and coordinate with the LEA to do joint inspections and investigation into odor complaints whenever possible. Outside the public nuisance and odor complaints associated with compost operations, both agencies do have jurisdiction and enforcement authority to make sure the compost operation is operating in compliance with each individual agency's permit and regulatory requirements. Air District inspectors conduct inspections of all sources at the facility that it's permitted for, including those at the compost operation. Inspections at the landfill may include on-site surface monitoring for gas collection system leaks, inspections at the gas and leachate wells, the flare system, and all records that are required of the facility. From these inspection activities, 31 violations were issued to the landfill from 2020 through 2024. Next slide, please. This slide covers the different factors that can affect the inspector's complaint response and investigation. We encourage the public to report a complaint as soon as they see or detect emissions ongoing. The timeliness of complaints reported to us really allows the inspector to get out to the alleged site more quickly to verify the complaint. If complaints are reported hours later or even days later, that makes our investigation more challenging, especially when trying to pinpoint the source of emissions and violation. Meteorological conditions such as wind, rain, temperature are all examples of factors that may affect the presence of emissions. These variables make it especially important for complaints to be reported to the Air District as soon as possible. For example, wind direction may change between the time the complaint is reported and the time the inspector is able to arrive to conduct the investigation would make it difficult to locate and trace the emissions to a source. Some emissions, especially odors, are fleeting and may dissipate and disperse quickly. Occasionally, the inspector may receive multiple complaints in a short amount of time. While inspectors do review the complaints and prioritize which complaints to go to first, this does affect the time of the inspector's investigations. In cases where there are multiple complaints received, the supervising inspector gets involved to assign a backup inspector to the group to assist. Operations at the alleged site and facility can be intermittent or may stop by the time the inspector conducts the on-site inspection. So for example, dust and smoke plumes that the complainant saw may have stopped because their operation stopped. And we see this a lot with batch operations where a facility completes the batch and the emission stops. Complaints that lack detail and descriptions also impact the inspector's investigation. The investigation can be more difficult and challenging, especially if the inspector is unable to reach or contact the complainant to get additional details regarding the complaint. Complaints received outside Air District business hours, such as weekends, holidays, and nights, may also experience delayed response times. And lastly, complaints may be referred to another public agency if it's outside the Air District's jurisdiction and authority. In those cases, we may already be coordinating with the responsible agency, and there may be a slightly delayed response. Next slide, please. This last slide of my presentation highlights some ideas and opportunities of how community can improve the success of our complaint response and investigations. First of all, report an air quality complaint as soon as possible. As you heard in the previous slide, there are many different factors that can influence the investigation. If we can cut down the time by having members of the public contact us as soon as they observe ongoing emissions, this would help the investigation. Secondly, when reporting a complaint, provide specific detailed descriptions. This can help us pinpoint the alleged facility and pinpoint source of emissions more quickly. Provide videos and photos whenever possible, as they can be used as supporting evidence and help our investigation. We encourage the public to share this information with their community neighbors, friends, family on how to report an air quality complaint so that more people are aware of our complaint program and how to report a concern. Lastly, we do have tips for reporting an air quality complaint on our website and an odor wheel, which you see here on the right side here. The purpose of the odor wheel is to help people provide better descriptions of odors they observe. Sometimes it is hard to come up with words that describe the variety of odors that can occur, and we're hoping that these are helpful when reporting a complaint. Next slide, please. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we're gonna start with questions from the audience in Zoom. Any questions from either right now? Before we go to the board?
Nothing on Zoom.
Do y'all regulate the DTSC that works with Chevron down the street on what, 835 Castro? Do y'all work together?
So the question was, do we work with DTSC?
Yeah,
Yes, sir, we do.
and what is the repercussions once y'all do find an odor of something that's messing with it?
This is regarding Chevron?
Yeah, or anybody.
Right. Right, so I'll ask Ms. Lee to talk about, the question was, what are the repercussions once we work with DTSC and other regulators, once we determine the odor,
Yeah, odor or any harmful cause.
and if there's any harmful cause?
Sorry, Mr. Tran, can you repeat the question? It's
Yes, the gentleman asked, what are the repercussions, what are the consequences of when we work with agencies like DTSC and other groups, once we identify the odors, identify the cause, like what are the repercussions?
Yeah, I know. What is that process? look
Yeah,
like?
what does that process look like when we go through the process of, if you could talk more about how we get to the process of issuing a notice of violation and penalties, I think that's what you're asking.
And the interaction with DTS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll talk about our interactions with DTSC, please.
Yeah, so we do coordinate with DTSC occasionally and other regulatory partners regularly, depending on what compliance concerns we are seeing from the inspector. And so if there is a potential violation that we see that involves another regulatory agency, we do refer that and coordinate with them. This could include like joint inspections out at the facility with them, where we help them identify what the problem is. And then also, you know, it allows DTSC and our other regulatory partners to determine whether there's violations that they can issue. We do, you know, our inspectors who are out at these facilities regularly, we do, you know, work with the partners closely. And so we do regularly notify them if we see something that's out of compliance that might be in their jurisdiction. And so when violations are issued with our regulatory partners, by our regulatory partners, we also may have enforcement actions that we take on our end, and we, you know, coordinate and collaborate on those enforcement cases.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions for you, just to clarify. I know you spoke of, the wind, I guess the wind drift, once a complaint is done and investor comes out, and therefore it may not, see any evidence or have any evidence because of the wind change in the downdraft. Okay, that's understandable. But I was looking at, you said this is, for 948-01, correct?
Yes.
This is 94801. My question and concern is the Viola plant. It is right next door on the line of 94801, which is 94802. So with it being so close, and lately they've had odors, and the odors had, some of the odors had come from Viola, and then some has looked at, it was pointed for the landfill at this point. To say this, what is the outcome from the Viola, if it was any complaints, and I know it's been plenty of complaints, not just from 94801, but from 94802. So have you had any logs of that for investigation to look at that? I know that is not your general area, but it is just a hairline difference from one community to the other at this point. And went down drifts, and to have those airs to actually come into the community, and by that time the air shifted. So have you had any complaints from Viola?
So Ms. Lee, did you hear Vice Chair King Meredith's question?
Is the question if we receive complaints alleging the Veolia plant?
Right,
Yes.
and it's downdraft, yes.
That's right.
We do receive a number of complaints alleging Veolia, and our inspectors conduct investigations at the wastewater treatment facility regularly as well. That data did not show up on my presentation today because we only looked at 94801 zip code. That said, I do acknowledge that complaints do come in and affect, potentially a greater area. So, it's not showing up in the data today, but because I only looked at the 94801 zip code, but there could be an impact beyond the 802 zip code that you're saying.
That is difficult. And well, thank you for that. And the other question for the monitors, are you still using monitors to actually detect, the different levels of the particles that are being released in the air?
Our inspectors don't have equipment for monitoring the air specifically for complaints. There is a reason for that. Our human noses are actually very sensitive and in most cases more able to identify and trace odors. And so, our noses can actually detect, very specific types of odors. The challenge here with monitors is that monitors, you have to know what you're trying to detect, right? And so unless you have that information, it's, not possible that where there's a single monitor that can detect everything. And so our noses, allow us to detect it with the complainant, but also trace it to the specific facility and identify the source, which most monitors won't be able to do.
I may be wrong, not from what you just reported out, but a few years, I guess, when Dr. Clark, before his passing, we talked about different monitors and on the fencings, and to have to report out and to give this information for so many particles per million. And so I'm a little confused at this, and I'm just trying to, I'm confused myself with this report and how it is determined for the investigators to come in and not to have any type of tool to register or to monitor, to get a really feed in of what type of particles are being released. So that's why I'm confused there.
And so, Madam Vice Chair, if we may, we can come back to another MAC meeting with our monitoring team and talk more about our monitoring program. But I would like to ask Ms. Lee and as well as Dr. Bauer, if you could talk about how we use monitoring data in terms of addressing NOVs and what we use that data for to assess if there are any violations of our rules and regulations. I think that may be helpful.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
She's gonna do that, then you.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. As part of our inspections regularly at these facilities that have continuous emission monitors, we look at data regularly. And so we request these records as part of our inspection, and we make sure that they're in compliance with emission limits and our air quality regulations. And also we have air monitoring stations across the Bay Area and ground level monitors at, for example, the refinery, and we look at that data as well.
And if I could add to that, hi, everybody, Dr. Meredith Bauer here. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for our Engineering Division, which is permitting, and our Compliance Division. I know a little bit about the monitoring, so I will share what I know. I do know Veolia has some H2S monitoring on site. And so that's another data point for us. I think as my colleague Tracy Lee was saying, you can smell the H2S before it even really triggers a high level on the monitors. So that's why when you're trying to track down a complaint, so there's two different things. There's the complaint and then there's an investigation that can follow up. When you're trying to track down a complaint, I mean, you've all sort of walked, you're like, something smells, and you just kind of walk and you're like hotter, colder, and you go look for it. So for ongoing, once we trace where it is, we can deploy other parts of our agency who do have monitors. When we know what we're looking for, we can send someone out with a specific type of monitor to go identify what is the amount. Usually we know generally what that is. So as Tracy was saying, it's not like there's not like a Ghostbusters kind of clad person who can go out with all sorts of machinery and you know, just start taking measurements. You have to kind of be more specific. So it's a little bit of a two-step process. Go look and see what it is, and then call in the people who can do the monitoring. For more ongoing things, I mean, we're on site at some of like Chevron all the time with monitors, but that's not usually based on a complaint. That's it can be, but it's usually just our normal inspections. So Tracy has really talked a lot about the complaints. That triggers a whole process on our side, but we have a whole entire other arm of just routine inspections, routine monitoring, and as my colleague Viet Tran suggested, we can come back and help you understand how the other parts of our agency work too.
We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how often you guys test the air and do you guys test it at different times? Because sometimes the plant will be doing different things like after hours, you can see the side of it from what's going on and stuff. So it'd be different timing. So I was just wondering how often do you guys come out there to test the air, or is it just random, or you guys just trying to get the right equipment to do the job?
Did y'all hear the question? I can repeat it.
I can't really hear any of the questions from the room. I'm sorry.
Dr. Bauer. So the question was, how often does the air district go out and test the air? I'm imagining around these sources of pollution, the stationary sources. Like how often are we conducting tests of the air?
We're patrolling every day around Richmond and North Richmond. We go to specific facilities that we understand to be more problematic more regularly. And we also have a full inspection schedule that Tracy Lee can talk more about, but that's when we do sort of our wall-to-wall inspections where it's like, you know, you look at everything. But otherwise, we are out there walking, driving, looking, just making sure that we are not seeing anything. It's you know, daily, weekly, it depends on the facility, but we're out there all the time looking around.
There was an additional question, Dr. Bowers, time of day. Like if it was going, like, do we do it periodically throughout the day? Do we do evening testing? Or is it, you know, is there any kind of sense that you can provide to the group?
It's business hours at this point. And that is one thing I think that Tracy Lee mentioned, that we'd like to expand. We're looking into ways to be more responsive. Evenings and weekends are off times. And it's, you know, it's a challenge. We're not first responders, so we kind of don't have this sort of evening, weekend kind of schedule that we have. But we do recognize that as an enforcement agency, there are things going on outside of business hours that we want to hold the polluters accountable to. So we're working on figuring out how we can have, it's partly a human resources problem, and that's not anything any of you should have to worry about, but it's something I worry about and Tracy worries about, and we're trying to work it out. And I certainly appreciate the concern and the thinking around that.
So like what you just said, so you rely, let's say you rely on the community to say something about 4 o'clock in the morning, or something that's going on. Do you have a trigger in there if somebody said something to come out right away? Is there, besides, I guess you could call would the fire department come out for flaring and the smell? I don't know that that's the case, so just trying to see what's the response when you're not there that it gets attention.
Right, and this is happening after hours.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Tracy, I think we heard, did you hear that, Tracy?
I did. I
And let me just note that again, we're touching on a different part of the agency than what Tracy was talking about, which is an incident. But Tracy, if you can sort of say there's the complaints. So that's one way that we find out about a problem. And there's a certain system that Tracy can talk about. But then there's also incidents which would often bring in first responders, fire department and all that. But Tracy, can you touch on both of those for everyone?
Yeah, so specifically for after hour complaints, we do have an on-call. Well, first of all, we have an answering service. So if you contact us to report a complaint online or via phone, you will get in touch with our answering service, who then logs and tracks the complaint and also works closely with our on-call supervisor. And so the on-call supervisor does make an evaluation to determine whether to deploy someone at 4 a.m. Typically, unless it's an incident, we generally wouldn't at that hour, and we would wait to 7:30 a.m. when the inspector comes on, unless it's related to an incident, of course. And then for regular business hours, we do have dispatchers available that can take the complaint and immediately dispatch it out to inspectors.
Yeah, follow-up question.
Yes, I was wondering, do it go from, us making a complaint and you guys coming out tracking the data and having whoever's accountable for doing it, like, because what's the process? Because you make a complaint, somebody got to come out and get the data that's saying what's really going on, they have people accountable, so
All right, so the question was essentially, how do we validate the complaint data? When a complaint is made, who goes out and investigates, or like, what's the process when a complaint is made? That the air district, how do we process that information and how do we investigate that when a complaint is made?
Mm-hmm. So as soon as you report a complaint, if it's
Sorry, and the chairman said after hours too, one day.
if you do report a complaint after hours specifically, the answering service will log that as a complaint. Our on-call supervisor does get that information and is able to make an evaluation to determine when to send an inspector out. So for instance, if it's like at 7 p.m. And we receive, calls about, facility XYZ, right? And there's a number of complaints. We do definitely at that hour could respond, especially if it's related to an incident. In most cases, we're getting like single complaints potentially in the evening that that don't always rise to the level of an incident. And so in those cases, we do note that and then we respond the next day.
Go ahead, your fault.
What is the time limit of like the pollution? How long will it stay in the air to give you guys time to try to come out? If you guys want to try to see or see what it is or something like what type of time will you guys?
Still in place or what?
Okay, so the question, follow-up question was, what is the air district's time limit for when pollution is in the air? Do we investigate, right? Did I capture that correctly? No. For us to make our assessment, how much time do we need during an incident?
Yes. But then the complaint, are you just guys looking for a complaint? What is it?
Yeah, what makes the horse go?
Yeah, I guess, so if I can try to summarize, it's essentially what triggers a threshold for us to respond to an incident or consider it as an incident versus a complaint to investigate. Like, when do we send an inspector to investigate as opposed to if it's a complaint that doesn't, what sets off that the air district will send somebody? I guess is the question.
With it logging in the air, with the log, with the log fuel there in the air.
Oh, okay. So with the pollution that remains in the air, like say, for example, smoke, right? Like, when will we send one? And if I may, everyone, so last Saturday was an after hours event at Chevron. So there was some flaring that happened at Chevron. We received 11 complaints. It was smoke, burning tire smell, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, Ms. Lee, Dr. Bauer. And so we were going to issue a notice of violation for public nuisance for that flaring at Chevron on Saturday. That was outside of normal working hours. We received calls. We sent inspectors. Inspectors arrived at Chevron shortly after the flaring occurred and stayed for 4 hours to ensure that there wasn't going to be additional flaring going on. any additional violations of our rules and regulations. So I don't know if anyone else had any additional questions on that, but that's an example of when we send inspectors, is when there is an incident, you know, and it's.
So you guys was actually in the air, or it says pollution? It was out there, like they had a release of this.
Sure. Okay, so the question is, do the inspectors make an assessment of what's in the air, or do they just say it's pollution? Like, in other words, you know, can our inspectors make an assessment on the scene in the moment of what's in the actual pollution in the air, in the smoke, in the flares?
Yeah, our inspectors wouldn't be able to make that type of assessment, but if it's a visible emissions violation, our inspectors are certified to read visible emission plumes. And so if that is happening, they can take a visible emissions reading, and that goes into documenting the violation.
So would you issue like a shelter in place warning until you figured it out?
So in terms of issuing shelters in place, that's Contra Costa County Health. The Air District does not issue a shelter in place. We issue air quality advisories, but we will always defer to Contra Costa Health as the authority to say the shelter in place. We don't report to Contra Costa Health. No, ma'am. No.
Saturday, I saw.
Yes, ma'am.
Two, right beside each other, okay? So I saw it and I didn't hear any siren, I didn't hear anything go off, but I did see it. What time? It was around 3.
So the sirens are managed by Contra Costa County Sheriff. The Sheriff's Department is the jurisdiction that manages the sirens and the Contra Costa County warning system. That's again through the county.
So who has the monitoring? Who controls the monitoring? Because I know when Dr. Clark was here, he used to always talk about fence line monitoring.
Yeah. So we will bring a monitoring person to come from the Air District at a separate MAC meeting, but we can't speak to that right now. We're not the monitoring team, but we can certainly bring the monitoring team to the MAC to make sure that you can get this.
Like to know what the data they get, and they have to bring the data back for everybody to tell you guys what's in the air, right?
Yeah, I don't know, Dr. Barr, do we want to talk about the gentleman's asking if we know about the data that we collect to bring it back to the Air District to investigate? Yeah.
So it caused health benefits, like not benefits, but like
Yeah.
problems, stuff like that. So we need to know we at least previously combated with something.
Yeah, maybe we could bring our health officer to come to the next meeting to talk more about that as well as the health effects. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Basically, because it's all different
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah, but for who we have here is our compliance and enforcement team, Mr. Chair, but we're happy to bring out the
But
additional
it's
team.
good because we discovered.
Yes, sir.
So we have a question, right? Okay.
Me?
Yeah.
I just have 2 questions. My first question is, being that these are really high numbers of complaints and high numbers of violations, are there any cap on the violations that y'all are giving? Like, you just could keep violating and getting violations?
Did y'all hear that question?
What's the repercussion for the violation?
Yeah, like the complaint numbers are very high, right? And y'all have been, I think I've seen over 80 notices to Chevron, over 30 violations to the landfill. Is there a cap at the violations you can get, or you can just keep getting violations?
Well, they have to, it's a great question, and the repeat violators, you know, are something we're, again, trying to bring more and more focus to. So the way the Air District Authority works is that we can have some sort of cease and desist or an abatement order. Those are technical terms for like, hey, you have to stop what you're doing until you fix the problem. But and so they fix that problem. What you see with all of these other violations is, you know, with these complex facilities, you fix one thing and then this other thing breaks and has a violation. And so, and we're there quite often. So we see all sorts of different things. So for something that would be repeated and they can't fix it, then they can't operate in a way that they can't comply with our rules. So it's, partly it's a little cat and mouse, as you fix one problem and then another thing happens and then you're chasing that problem and they fix it. So they're always kind of coming back into compliance, but then something else kind of happens. So that's why this is an ongoing, never-ending kind of a job, and
No cap
we
on
don't
vi-
have the authority to just say you violated too many times, you don't get to operate. That's really another county thing. But what we can do is say, hey, you have to clean up your situation in order to keep going.
Great, so there's no cap on the violations, there's only a cap on a particular violation. They get a cease and desist, okay, that's fine. My last question is, how many jobs are employing this program, this complaint program that y'all launched?
Tracy?
Was the question how many staff?
How many
have?
employing with the complaint program?
Staffing?
At the air district, you mean?
Yeah.
How many people are employing in the complaint?
For
program?
this particular
Yeah,
program?
we do have 45 inspectors across the 9 counties, and we have 10 supervisors. But in our division, we have 80, right under 90 staff members.
Yeah.
But 45 are in the field doing inspections and investigations. We do have a specific refinery group, which has multiple inspectors assigned, and that allows us to get into the refineries and specific facilities regularly on a daily basis with more than one inspector.
And if I could add some statistics to what Tracy just shared, we have 10,000 facilities that we have permits given to, so we regulate them specifically. Many more facilities that are just small kind of facilities that don't require permits, but that we're looking for as well. Like, are you actually following regulations? And those 45 to 50 inspectors cover all of those 10,000 facilities, and the whole Bay Area, the 9 counties that we cover is 5,000 square miles. So they're all over, they're busy all the time. I mean, it's a lot of it's a lot of space and a lot of facilities for them to keep track of.
Okay, so, a couple things, did you hear an alarm today? It's not Wednesday, but there were like a couple of alarms that went off today. I wasn't sure what that was about. It's usually the first Wednesday. Well, today, there were a couple of alarms, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to ask, so I did call someone, the response was very fast. But the end of that was that because it was a landfill, then that's out of your jurisdiction, and it was the county environmental. But still, it seems like it's like a never-ending thing, where it's just like this consistent smell, and I'm not sure, but I think the two things that, okay, so you said that you issue these, that, the landfill is not in your jurisdiction, but did you say you also issue violations to the landfill, even though it's not in your jurisdiction?
Yeah, I'm happy to clarify that. So we do issue land inspections, we do issue violations to the landfill. What I meant in my presentation about not having jurisdiction and authority is specifically for compost related odor complaints. We don't have jurisdiction to issue a public nuisance violation. So those are specifically tied to complaints, right, for a public nuisance. But we do issue violations regularly at the landfill and also at the compost operation, which we do, permit. And so the compost operation does have permit conditions associated with it, and we do and can issue violations on those. That said, not specifically for odors related to compost.
Okay, so these violations, so when you, are they fined, and like, does the money come to the community? When you say you issue a violation, what does that look like? Is it just wording, or is it an actual like consequence?
So our violations carry a monetary penalty typically, But we do have a legal division that handles all that. They review all the violation reports that are documented and written up by our inspectors, and then they assess, for penalties and determine how to resolve these violations.
That money comes to the community, what happens with the money that, when you find these?
You can't speak up.
When you're finding the people, does the money come to the community?
Yes, yeah, it does. That we have the board just passed a policy that distributes penalty money back in the communities affected by the source of the violation. So we have a policy. So right now, the board just approved the Office for Community Investments. And actually, I believe Deputy Executive Officer Arsenio Mataka, are you still on? He might not be. Okay, so what we'd like to do is to bring that office and Dr. Bauer, my colleague, Arsenio Mataka, who oversees the Office of Environmental Justice, Civil Rights, Community Investments, and community programs, and he and his staff can talk about that program that the board just approved. They just approved it last year, and it's a policy.
Excuse me, Viet?
Yes, sir. Okay, Arsenio is on.
Yeah, I apologize. It was hard to hear, but are you referring to the penalty policy in the Community Investment Office?
So the question was, is when the air district receives penalty monies.
Sure.
Monies go back to the community.
Right, yeah, it's actually, I'd be happy. I know that's not part of the agenda, but as Mr. Tran said, I'd be happy to go back. The short story is that now, under a recent policy, many of the penalty policies come back to the community. It's a little bit of a formula, but the bottom line is, yeah, the penalties are going back to the community, and there's a process for that. In fact, we would like to come to this advisory council soon, because some of those penalties are already earmarked for the Richmond area. So, yeah.
Who oversees the funds that?
So the follow-up question is who oversees the funds? And then if we may, Mr. Chairman and council members, if we could come back to another council meeting, we'd like to have Arsenio and his staff come in to talk about that program. But the question is who oversees the funds?
Yeah, that's the board of directors, which comprised of, several public officials on our air district board. I'm, in executive leadership, so I oversee, I had to establish this new office called the Community Investment Office. And that office will be in charge of implementing the program. But the bottom line is that the board of directors have the final say on issuing and approving the awards.
And we also have a member of the air district staff that would like to speak.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joelle Thompson, and I'm with the Environmental Justice Division. Arsenio is our DEO, and we're also going to be having a meeting where the Community Investments Office is coming to present, as well as our community benefits standing committee, which is a group of community members. And so that's coming up this month as well. So there seems to be a lot of interest in the money going back to the community. That's what we're working on in the office.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. Appreciate it.
Just one more you had.
And then from this community, for you guys, is there any members from this community?
So Supervisor Joya is on our board. So he represents our community. But you mean a community member? So we're asking, please.
So we will have our discussions here and we will input to John Joya about what we want. But you can always go down to the Board of Supervisors and talk about that in general. But we will make recommendations from here.
That's right.
Based on that. But I want to say, they gotta come back for a lot of stuff. I've got, bringing back the data on, O2 and I've got, the monitoring team, and now we got this, and I probably missed a few, but we'll, Tanya, I think you have some of the notes. So if you allow us to move this process, we moved quite a bit, so I appreciate you coming out. We know you'll be back. When is the coming back?
When they want.
We'll find out, Mr. Chair, from the council, what you want to talk about, and we'll bring our staff out to the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, next.
All right, we're gonna have our community report now. Tanya, you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'll just invite everyone to come out to Thrive Thursday. It's Thrive Thursday in Pastos. It's a weekly summer series that Supervisor Joya, Councilmember Doria Robinson, and Rising Juntos is doing at Nickel Park from 5:45 to 7 p.m. It's weekly, every Thursday until August 14th, and we kick it off with a walking group, so they do laps around the park and with the doctor, so we also have walk with the doc, and then we do a dance class, and then we finish with yoga, and then we simultaneously, we also have now, starting this week, we'll have soccer sessions for toddlers. So if you have little ones who want to kick the ball and kind of learn, do some little runs and stuff, get their energies out, so by the time you get home, you just put them to bed. Come join us every Thursday. Nickel Park in Richmond. That's along McDonald, close to the Civic Center. So that's the 33rd. So that's every Thursday till August 14th.
Is anybody from the Housing Authority, Council Housing Authority?
Good evening, everybody. This is Cody Berry, Deputy Executive Director with the Housing Authority, Contra Costa County. Couple of updates for you all tonight. First off, we're actually going to begin marketing the former Los Deltas scattered sites that are being sold at market rate in the next week or so. I'm going to place a flyer in the chats to give you all an advanced preview of what that looks like, but you may recall first priority was going to go to former residents of Los Deltas who were relocated when the property closed, and then second priority is going to go to the residents of North Richmond and workers of North Richmond. That priority buffer will be in place for 120 days, starting roughly June 10th, and we'll be accepting letters of interest or offers from the folks that want to buy these sites, as of June 10th, and we won't be looking at them until August 1st. So the first review of the interest letters is going to be August 1st. Excuse me. At that time, we're going to see, who's interested, what the priority level is, and then we'll proceed from there. Where there's multiple buyers interested in the same priority group that are interested in the same unit, we'll conduct a lottery to determine who gets the opportunity to buy the unit. And then after that 120-day restricted period, which is roughly going to go to about October 10th, we'll be opening it up to the general public to be able to submit offers on the remaining units that are available at that point. And then, we'll generally accept the best offer that suits the Housing Authority. Next up, on May 20th, our Board of Commissioners approved a partnership of CHDC and Eden Housing as the new master developer for the former Los Deltas main campus. So we want to congratulate them. As you may know, we had a selection panel of 9 people review the proposals, and this panel was the ones that have ultimately selected the winning team there. We're still waiting on a draft of our exclusive negotiating agreement from our attorneys so that we can begin negotiations with CHDC and Eden Housing for the transfer of the main campus to their partnership. And then once we come to agreement on that document, we'll present it to HUD for final approval and disposition of the property. Lastly, I wanted to give everyone a heads up that we'll be opening 16 project-based voucher site-based wait lists on June 30th. The process will be like it's been in the past. They'll all be online, and people can log in on June 30th at 10 a.m. and the applications will be open for people to submit. If anyone needs a reasonable accommodation or needs a paper application, we'll have those available at our Housing Choice Voucher offices. We're opening up 7 senior properties for applications. and also 9 family waitlist properties. This is also going to include a new waitlist for Legacy Court, which is currently under construction down in the 12 and 1300 blocks of Fred Jackson Way. So anyone interested in living on those properties, this is the opportunity to get into one of the assisted units in those properties. People can apply to one or more of those properties. There's no restriction there. But you do need to be aware of the age restrictions. So if you're not 62 or older, don't apply to the senior wait list. You'll be rejected. But otherwise, you're welcome to apply to all 9 family units and all 7 senior units if you qualify within that group. And I'll also put flyers about that, so you're going to get the advance viewing of that. They're not supposed to go out until later this week or early next week, so you'll be able to see that. I'll put the English and the Spanish versions out there. That's it. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering how you guys go incentivize the people that are staying in Los Delta housing prior to you guys removing them on buying a house. It's not like they sold the house, you guys removed them from, they coming back and just want to buy this property for market value. Then you guys already giving them 120 days. I don't know if you guys did workshops, whatever, to prepare people to get in position to buy these homes, but to put that out there, that they never give nobody a real chance, based off the circumstances, it's like crazy.
So if somebody in the room can kind of repeat that for me, it's hard to hear from the audience.
They can hear better with this mic.
No, I was just saying, like, you guys giving the people that stayed in the Los Delta housing opportunity to buy these houses, and these people come from low income housing, and like they didn't sell the house, you guys moved them out and moved somewhere else. Now they have 120 days to buy the house they was already in for market rate. I'm just trying to see in 120 days, and you guys haven't put in the resources like workshops, preparing people, getting them in position to actually buy these houses other than what the nonprofits is doing. I'm just like, how do that work, and how do that even make sense?
Well, you know, if you've been following this process here, we've been talking about this for the last 4 years and giving people the heads up to start getting ready to become homeownership qualified. We've been making referrals. We've been communicating with the families that have been relocated from Los Deltas on a regular basis. We've been giving them information about homeownership counseling, primarily through CHDC and Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services. All of these were to say it's to get kind of, you know, on the runway for getting to this point where we are today. Again, you're not expected to have the amount of money that it takes to buy a market rate unit. You're expected to get yourself to the point where you can qualify for a loan so that you are able to purchase one of these. And lenders have different types of loan programs. And when you're involved in some of these homeownership counseling programs, you start learning about a lot of some of these programs. Also, if you were relocated with a housing choice voucher out of Los Deltas, you can participate in our family self-sufficiency homeownership program that also comes with rental, you know, mortgage assistance. Instead of paying, for example, if you were renting something, the FSS program helps pay your rent. Well, they also have a homeownership program where we help pay the mortgage, and it's for a fixed term. But during that period, you're generally working your way into getting to a more stable financial situation. So it isn't really last minute. It may sound last minute, but we're now at a point where we're ready to launch, and we're saying for 120 days, the families that were there are going to have first go at these units. But if it's not the time to start thinking about, well, how am I going to go qualify for this, or how I'm going to have to go clean up my credit, you should have been doing that over the course of the last 2 or 3 years that we've been literally talking about this very same thing.
And they just scattered out. Like, I had to go to Martinez. It's like everybody got these nonprofits and they collaborating together, but everybody is different places. So I might go to this nonprofit and need help with this, but they might send me to Martinez. I'm gonna get the Martinez.
Okay, let me say right.
I'm just talking to him.
Backyard, you got it right here, right from the street. You've been here forever doing that same thing.
We're not sending anyone to Martinez.
instead of meeting at the guy's building, like, you know about that? Like, she's trying to get resources.
Yeah, we've been here forever, doing the same thing.
Well, it's not getting to the youth, and the youth is not getting it. My generation, I'm not talking about what you guys been doing, it's just not getting to my. Yeah, home buyers and all, I'm just trying to get this information to my generation, so.
We have it, you can help us do it.
That's what I'm doing, I mean, you guys do it,
I'm just saying that we have it, and so we can work together, how about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I was just trying to get them up to speed to what's going on right now because it's moving fast, that's it.
Yeah, but, yeah, we have been working.
No, I'm just talking about my youth, my age group. I'm just talking about my age group.
Talk to Tony, cause he got a group of people that he been working with.
Oh,
They haven't heard nothing about it.
Right.
Yeah, they don't know nothing.
He's just trying to talk to Tony to see if, try to connect in what way and how we can at least get people in the room where he at. Cause mind you, Richmond has a historical conflict that some people that live in this neighborhood cannot go to the other side of Richmond. So he's just trying to get all, I guess, people or the organizations, the HOC to come to where they at. And they beating at you, they using at the resource center, whatever, you know, just.
No, we're happy to connect, try to close that loop. If we're missing it.
I'm creating a disconnect because y'all probably see what y'all doing, but I'm saying it's a whole disconnect of people.
Well, I'm saying let's connect that.
Yeah, that's what we doing.
No, obviously we haven't, right?
Well, I started Monday, it was started Monday without you guys, at the resource center with, Janine, and that's what we've been doing, is basically inviting everybody that have a part or have resources to basically meet with us.
Janine is part of us too.
Yeah, she let us use her building because she said anything, within the community, we can use the building for free, so
I mean, all I'm saying is, whatever we're missing, let's make it connect, that's all.
Yeah.
Let's do that. All right, Tony, anything else, Tony?
And email.
Oh, that's it.
All right, thanks, Tony. We're gonna have. Urban Tip.
Hey, I work at the North Richmond Department 323 Riverside Drive. So, you know, we have the applications open for the Summer Youth Apprentice Program. And the applications close the 23rd of May. And so they're gonna be, the program is like 6 weeks during the summer. And, 100 hours, the stipend is $1,500. Yeah, you should really, keep us, urbantup.org/employment. There's always, positions there, we want you to apply for, and we always have, paid training, so whether it's youth or adults. So right now we have the fellowship going on, they're older, the teens, 15 to 19. And then in the fall, you have an opportunity to apply for paid training. You can get our events on, urbantup.org/events. And we have, Cheryl from the Watershed Program and Robert from Just Transition. Do you guys have anything? They're both urban.
I just want to say, putting it out there that, the Watershed Program is scheduling a creek cleanup at Wildcat Creek on August 2nd. So we're looking for other orgs to come collaborate with us. We're trying to do a creek cleanup softball game. So trying to really get, our North Richmond community out here to collaborate with us.
Not much of an update, but I feel like, this transition team at Urbanville has been trying to connect a lot more with the community members. We have been, actively going to, Richmond City Council meetings and back to inviting guys to just like come up to me, take down some names. I've seen some of your faces while the VTSC is out here presenting at Fairfield Elementary School. I have some good connections to get you guys informed on air pollution. Something that they didn't talk about was particulate matter 2.5, which is something that is very concentrated here in North Richmond. So I would love to get all that connection.
And Rock and Kiara, so they are the ones who do, I don't know if you guys have like herbal pits. So because of the fires, that's how it was originally started, but it's like, herbs for like your respiratory and things like that. So, the contact to happen. Of course, we always have our free farm stands every Thursday here in North Richmond at, McLaughlin, every Thursday at 2, first come, first serve. But yeah, be sure to check out our website so you can see everything.
And the Skype program, you said it's already hired enough teenagers and stuff.
Yeah, so they,
That's the one you just said, that's not.
right, well, close on May 23rd, and so, yeah, that was close already.
Is there anything else for the summer for you?
You know what, we just had, Fresh Approach just sent us a couple of positions for summer and fall, so I can ask you. That's, and then I can also ask if there's any, well, the Army Club, no, but we always get information from other boards, so I can just give me your information, I can shoot you that.
I got teenagers asking you all the time, I got one right here, one in work.
Okay. No, teenager, how old are you? 15, okay. All right, so give me your information and see what we can do.
All right, we'll see. All years.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. We wanted to,
You gotta speak up now.
okay. We wanted to provide the update about one of our projects called Legacy Court. It's the affordable housing project, which is being built on Fred Jackson Way. Some of you maybe noticed the construction happening. This is the joint venture between Community Housing Development Corporation and Eden Housing. So once the project is complete, it will provide a total of 43 units. 42 units will be affordable housing and will be available for the residents with the area median income from 30 to 60% of from 30 to 60% area median income. We started construction in November, and right now our projection is to complete the construction by the end of this year. Some of the amenities that the project will have is we're going to have community room, community kitchen, computer labs with high-speed internet, and play structures. And we also have, we're going to have 48 off-street parking. And there will be 42 units. Out of 42 units will include 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. I will let Angie, who is, I will let Angie to talk about the leasing process.
Hi, I'm Angie Watson. I'm with Eden Housing. So we are partners in this development. We will also be managing the site. And so I'm here to just kind of give an update. We do have a flyer here on kind of the leasing process of it. We don't have dates nailed down yet. We're working on that. But the good thing is if you look on the back, there's a QR code and there's a website. I highly encourage going on there, getting on the interest list, because that's where we're gonna be sending out flyers and updates on when the wait list opens, you know, all of the good stuff. So that's your go-to, to get on the interest list. Looks like rough dates are mid-December move-in if everything goes well and no construction is delayed. That means we'll start our leasing process roughly August, September. It takes us a while to get the building, get people, we'll have to open a wait list, we'll have to do a lottery, and then we'll start processing the files. Like you said, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, 13 of the units, is it 12 or 13?
13.
13 of the units are units to support residents at risk or experiencing homelessness or the need of mental health services. So those will be units that will work together with the county on. The other units will be working on our wait list or a wait list with the housing authority. Any questions?
And I just want to add something to what Angie spoke about. The the project-based voucher wait list will be open on June 30th. So if you're interested, as Tony mentioned earlier, there is a possibility that, there is an opportunity for you to submit the application, which will open on June 30th of this month. And you will have the time until July 24th by 5 p.m. So as Tony mentioned, they're accepting the applications. It can be online or it can be with the housing authority in their office.
And let me preface that by saying, that's for the housing project-based voucher units that we have on site. So do apply for that one. However, also keep an eye out for our internal wait list also, because those are different units. And so then you can get on both wait lists, just make sure, you can double, yeah, you're covered, so those are separate wait lists, so you want to get on both of them, to make sure, that you're on both.
And if you want to join the interest list, it would be on this flyer, and then let us know if you didn't get one. So you'll be able to scan the QR code, and then you'll be transferred to the web page where you'll be able to provide your information, like your name, your address where you live right now, and then you'll as we move forward with the project, you'll get notified as we get more information.
And Sandra Reader's with me, she will be the property supervisor, so you'll see Sandra on site a lot, especially at the very beginning.
And before you all post it, and once you do that, don't keep that information to yourself.
Oh, spread it.
Just disseminate it,
Absolutely.
people know that housing and they'll keep it to themselves. And they will not pass that information on. Now, a lot of that goes on. Okay, so if you got any people that know they need housing, they would like to have housing, pass the information on and let them know, we have housing available and you may be able to have one of those apartments. Okay, so pass the information, don't keep it to yourself. Okay, I'm through.
Any type of company that for the business, like, all shelters, residents have this place, any type of company?
We do have priorities, suppose they have priorities.
Let me double check that, I know the priority,
That's- I
Contra
think that's
Costa,
what-
it's Contra Costa County priority, if I'm not mistaken.
We do have priorities.
Okay.
So we will solidify
Okay.
that.
Cynthia has a question. Can both of the presenters give me their first and last name, please?
Sure, my name is Angie Watson.
And Angie,
Yes, Angie
and last name was Watson?
Watson, yes.
Yes. Next.
And my name is Bayer, it's B-A-I-R. Last name is Malinoff.
Okay, I think you have you in my minutes. All right, thank you.
Okay, so you have Eden Housing and CHDC partnership. Yes. Angie is Eden Housing.
So we should be working closely with our community building engagement folks to get the word out. Actually, at the resource center has a place where they can set up and apply, et cetera. So let's get that.
We will, we haven't started any of the full advertising yet, but we'll definitely be reaching out to community areas.
We want to let them know it's gonna be at the resource center, right across the street from CHTC. You'll be able to do it. That won't be the only place.
Right.
But that's where we'll have most of our.
Perfect. Any other questions?
And I know y'all doing a lot of work on the building over there, y'all doing it fast, and doing a good job. Any local hire, did y'all focus on local hire? I saw you guys had the workshop for the local hire, but at the same time, in the same breath, y'all was working on it. On any local hire, you guys work on it.
So for Legacy Court, we actually had the meeting and we attended this meeting, I believe, last month, because we had the job fair and then we advertised that the project has a requirement of the local hiring. And that's where we invited all of the residents to come and join and see, like, if they're looking for a job, then we'll be able to help them out. So we had the job fair.
You know how many placements we had? Hello?
I think last time, it was closer to 23 or 24%.
So I saw, I think I saw a slide, so the people that are building or that are directly involved in construction, they have to be a part of the union, is that correct?
Yes, yes. That's.
Oh, I was asking if the people that are part of construction, need to be part of, a union. Yeah, so you said yes, and so were there any apprentices? So when you had the job fair, what was that for? Was that for just jobs in general or?
It was both. So we had the carpenters union. They were talking like how to be how to be part of the union. What are the benefits of being in the union? They provided some kind of general information. And we also did advertised and then kind of reached out to our subs to see if they have anyone who is looking for the union workers.
Okay, anything else, questions from Zoom or viewers?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no problem, no problem. All right, one announcement I have for CHDC in partnership with NeighborWorks. We're having our annual Community Awareness Day. We're calling it Pathways to Resources. And the main thing about tomorrow, June 4th at 11 to 3, it's just shouting out the local services and resources we have. We'll have a tabling event here at this location, Corinne Sane Senior and Family Community Center, which is 515 Silver. I implore you guys to come. It'll be a great event. We'll have tabling out here. We'll also have a bus to shuttle some of the seniors around to just kind of see where the resources are around North Richmond. We'll have music, food, come by and be a part of the Community Awareness Day. We do it once a year. So we want to just keep this event growing and getting the residents of North Richmond involved. Let me show you this booklet. It'll be in color, but this is what the booklet will look like. And inside the booklet, it will have different resources and where they are on the map to find them. So, and we had the Willie Spears event last week on Saturday. The event was great. We'll be reporting out on social media to the community, the numbers that we did and some of the things that we want to correct for the next Willie Spears event, which will be in October 2025. And we'll, as we narrow down the date for that, we'll have more information coming out for that. So that.
Thank you.
All right.
Any questions here?
They should be short and quick, but, one, I just want to say, thank you, Deshaun, for coming in here, voicing your concerns. I see you, I hear your frustrations, and also that we have been here for a very long time, all of us on this panel. Tony, right, have been in North Richmond for years, you know, providing resources and doing a lot of work for North Richmond, the North Richmond community. So I'm hoping that we could, you know, potentially partner and collaborate. But I also want to start with this, is that Deshaun actually came forward to Richmond Land to basically say, how can we put together a community event where all the developers can come together, collaborate, and really spread this awareness of the new opportunities that are coming in North Richmond. So I thank you for bringing that event forward, and we're gonna hope that we move it, and y'all will see us out here August 2nd. And I'll let B and Dylan on the line give more of an update, but B, could you give just an update of the event? And then Dylan, after B goes, could you give just our organizational updates?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, y'all, can you hear me okay? All right, yeah, so like Princess said, we are doing a housing resource fair focused on Los Deltas to bring the developers together along with some realtors and lenders so that we can have some direct service available for folks to get the updates on the projects and where the developers are in their process, as well as actually do some intakes and be able to actually get some support on site as opposed to just, you know, getting contact information and following up. But like, while we have a captive audience, how can we actually get them moving in this process and connected on site to realtors and loan products that we know will work for them? And that would definitely apply to the market rate sales as well as the below market rate sales. So anything that is still available at that time or wanting to set people up. I will also have live performances, music. There will be a game truck out, a face painter. And we're going to be doing it right there on Silver, blocking off the street between Silver and Fifth, or sorry, on Silver between Fifth and Guermita. So that'll be taking place from 12 to 5. And we'll be inviting folks to come enjoy some of that activation and some food from a local caterer, as well as get some direct support and resources for anybody who's interested in buying one of the Los Deltas properties. So buy that the Jets on August 2nd from 12 to 2. I don't have the flyer on hand, but maybe Dylan, if you could drop it in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, but no, I'll definitely drop that in the chat for y'all. My name is Dylan. I'm community engagement manager over at Richmond Land. Give y'all quick updates about some of the community, some of the work Richmond Land's been doing in the community to kind of advance community controlled development and housing here in Richmond. So really quickly, for those who might not know us, Richmond Land's a community-rooted, member-led organization focused on building grassroots power through land acquisition, development, and stewardship that benefits our people, not for profit. So our vision is to work as a member organization to own and govern land that we live on. So with that being said, we have a member meeting coming up on Thursday of next week, June 12th. We will be in person over at Co-op Richmond, as well as on Zoom. Our members are kind of the core of our organization, so I really encourage y'all to come out to that space. Even if you're not a member currently, it's open to all. So if you are or you aren't, tell a friend, pass that information around. It's a space that we will actually be covering ways for our membership to bring forth and decide on future project and acquisition proposals. Other reasons you should become a member is just because you actually can be on the ground floor, assisting in creating more affordable housing here in Richmond for the folk that really need it. In that capacity, we've been out in the community this last month, doing a lot of work to advance policy around those goals and those missions. So that's being out at the Partnership for the Bay's Future, kind of crafting that vision around a just right to return. And that's to actually bring folk back who were removed from these spots for all different types of reasons, and have affordable housing for them to actually progress into ownership. We're also at the table developing the equitable public land disposition policy that outlines some goals for developing affordable housing on city-owned land, and the criteria that's going to actually guide that process. Aside from that, we actually have a couple projects as a CLT, a community land trust. Our first property is over on South 24th Street. We've been regularly meeting with residents to determine a co-stewardship model for their long-term benefit and ownership of the spot. Also, right now, we have been using the CLT model to improve and make that spot a lot safer. So right now, there's actually a full deck rebuild in process. And so we were able to actually relocate everybody safely, and we'll be bringing them back and hopefully doing like a ribbon cutting event with them. We're also in the midst of actually getting site control, and we're in escrow for our flagship development project. That's the North Richmond Eco Village over on 925 Guermita. It's a lot that is a Los Deltas site. We're bringing 16 to 22 permanent small units for community ownership there. Our team's been out there, kind of, looking over the site, walking around, just getting ourselves ready for this next step. So like I said, we're in escrow, and we're actually scheduled to close on that on Juneteenth. So it's a really powerful day and a really powerful way to kind of celebrate that day for our community. And so yeah, like I said, I just want to reiterate, please come out to that member meeting next Thursday, June 12th. Starts at 5 o'clock over at Co-op Richmond in person. There'll be food, there'll be drinks. We'll be covering our membership and how you can get involved through that proposal process and actually bring affordable housing and assets to the neighborhoods that mean the most to us. So once again, Thursday, June 12th, you don't have to be a member. Come on out, join us, chop it up with us in that space. I appreciate you guys.
Right. Back to City of Richmond. Yeah.
No.
You don't see?
I didn't see anyone, no, I don't see anyone.
Okay, the library group? Two programs. And I don't see anybody here from Shield Reed. Accept the motion to extend the meeting to, seven, what was that, 17?
Say 71. It's 17.
Okay, he said 17.
Yes, I make the motion.
Second? Is there a
Yes.
second?
I second.
Moved it. It's been moved. All in favor, I know you by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, extensions? Okay, 7/20 is the date.
Okay.
I think we've done all the reports.
I can see one hand raised now.
Okay,
B.
go ahead. Dee.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. I just wanted to lift up a couple other activities that some of the Los Deltas partners have going on. So Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services is doing a month worth of housing related workshops called Changing the Narrative of Home Ownership. And I know they have something that's happening tomorrow. Another one is coming up on Saturday, but throughout the month of June, if you check out Eventbrite, it's Changing the Narrative of Home Ownership. And then CHCC also is launching their Home Buyers Club for Los Deltas. There's an orientation for that on June 24th in the evening, and they'll be doing about 8 weeks worth of courses, again, related to homeownership preparation. So I'll go ahead and put the flyer in the chat. And if I can find the link for RNHS, I'll share that too.
Thank you, Dee. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.